set to go again. Chris, I stay next to you. And roll cameras, please.
61, break it, Quincy, take that.
Speed.
Set and background and action.
Cut. Nice. Cut there.
Welcome to Cinema and the Psyche. This introductory episode is just so I can give a brief description of what you can expect in the podcast as we go forward, which is movies, metaphysics, and the masses. In terms of movies, the centerpiece is an exploration of the nature of the cinematic art form. So it's not going to be reviews or, explorations of what other people think about movies today, or, I'm simply concerned with the art form as it was invented, developed, and as it can be in the future. Metaphysics, because the nature of the individual is metaphysical. Although the propaganda is that we're biological and chemical entities and everything's explained in a mechanistic Darwinian universe. And I think the individual is far more complex, and I feel that we're dealing with subtle energies. Mind and the intellect are subtle energies. And so it's cinema and the psyche. Metaphysics, or the psyche, is also relevant because the artist, the filmmaker, and even the other crew positions, all very important in understanding the nature of cinema and how it affects the individual, or how the individual creates cinema. And then the masses, simply because the movies that I'm concerned about, or the art form that I'm concerned about, is the mass media version of the form. I'm not really interested in experimental cinema with a very little audience that might be featured in museums. I'm interested in the multiplexes, the independent cinemas, the cinematic art form as it's experienced by the mainstream audiences. I think it's the most powerful, epic medium we have, and I think we know very little about how powerful, how deep it can be. And so this podcast is to explore that. A couple things that the podcast isn't, and I share this only because it's important for understanding what it is. It's not going to be scripted, as you might have imagined so far. I don't want to have a pre-formatted, perfect presentation. I'm more interested in the spontaneous, intuitional approach to communication from me to you. And therefore, I'm not interested in creating some perfect thing. I'd rather it be humanistic, from a person to a person, as though we were speaking. There's enough social media profiles where everybody is great all the time, or everything is perfect as you digest it online. And it's not real. So this is not going to be that. Another thing it's not going to be is academic in nature. It's a little bit tied into scripting the podcast, which I'm not going to do, but I'm not interested in reciting facts or information that you can find in an encyclopedia or other books or biographies or even commentaries on DVDs, which are great. I listen to commentaries all the time. It's just that's not what this podcast is. So I don't want to just collect information that already exists and present that. I want to create new information, find new inspirations. The last thing I want to mention that it's not going to be a collection of interviews of leaders in the field. I don't believe there are many leaders in the field of understanding the nature of cinema and what it can be. There are great filmmakers, and there have been great filmmakers throughout history. I'm an independent filmmaker myself. I wish to explore realms largely that haven't been explored, or at least are and have been only by really a few. Do I see any mention of the nature of the cinematic form and how powerful it can be, and alluding to the fact that we know very little about it, even though it's 120 years old. So that's a couple things that it's not going to be. And lastly, what it may be is I'm approaching making my first feature. I've been at film for about a decade or a little more, made lots of shorts, documentaries, studied a lot, and I'm approaching my first feature. I have a few scripts ready, some of them too expensive, but there is one designed as a first feature at a reasonable budget. And so I think probably the podcast will feed into that, and that will feed into the podcast. I mean, the real reason I came to the podcast is because I started developing theories and ideas around the nature of the cinematic art form and what it can be. And the podcast is a way for me to share that stuff I've collected in my notebooks and where I want to go with it. So I guess that's enough rambling for now. We'll get into episode 1. So I hope you enjoy it. The website is cinemaandthepsyche.com. There's a way to contact me there if you want to share any comments, have any questions, and join us for episode 1. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy and watch a movie or make one.